The photograph trembled in Sarah's hands as she stared at the impossible image, herself, standing in the doorway of the abandoned Millbrook Asylum, a place she'd never visited before today. The timestamp read 3 months ago, yet she had no memory of ever being here. Her reflection in the cracked glass behind her seemed to smile, while her actual face remained frozen in terror. The wind howled through the broken windows of the psychiatric facility, carrying with it the whispers of secrets that should have stayed buried. Sarah's breath caught as she noticed something else in the photograph, a figure in the background, watching her from the shadows, a figure that looked exactly like her, but somehow different, wrong. As thunder rumbled overhead, Sarah realized she wasn't alone in this decaying monument to madness. Someone had been expecting her arrival, someone who knew things about her that she didn't know about herself. The question wasn't why she was here, it was why she had come back. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah had been living an ordinary life as a forensic psychologist in the city, specializing in repressed memory cases. That normalcy shattered when she received an unmarked envelope containing dozens of photographs, all of her in places she'd never been, doing things she couldn't remember. The most disturbing showed her entering various abandoned mental health facilities across the state, always with the same vacant expression, always alone. Her colleagues dismissed it as an elaborate prank, but Sarah knew better. The details were too precise, too personal. In one image, she wore her grandmother's antique ring, a piece of jewelry she'd lost years ago and never mentioned to anyone. In another, she carried a notebook filled with her own handwriting, documenting patient interviews she'd never conducted. The psychological thriller had begun not with a crime scene or a missing person, but with the most terrifying realization of all. She was losing pieces of herself, and someone was collecting them. Dr. Marcus Webb, her mentor and the city's leading expert on dissociative disorders, studied the photographs with growing concern. His weathered hands traced the edges of each image as his eyes darkened with recognition. Sarah noticed his hesitation, the way he avoided direct eye contact when discussing her case. "Sarah, I need you to consider the possibility that these aren't fake. Multiple personality disorder often manifests in ways that surprise even the patient. You might be experiencing fugue states, periods where an alternate identity takes control." The words hit her like ice water. As someone who spent years studying the human mind's capacity for self-deception, Sarah understood the implications, but accepting it felt like acknowledging that her entire sense of self was a lie. The woman in the photographs moved with purpose, confidence, qualities Sarah struggled with daily. Webb's next words would change everything. "I think it's time you visited Millbrook. Your answers are waiting there." The drive to Millbrook Asylum took Sarah through increasingly desolate countryside, where abandoned farmhouses stood like tombstones against the gray sky. With each mile, she felt a strange familiarity, as if her body remembered this journey, even though her mind remained blank. Her hands knew exactly when to turn, which backroads to take. The asylum emerged from the mist like a Gothic nightmare. 4 stories of crumbling brick and broken promises. Established in 1923, it had housed thousands of patients before closing abruptly in 1987 amid allegations of experimental treatments and patient abuse. Local legend spoke of doctors who pushed the boundaries of ethical research, of patients who vanished without trace.
Sarah parked her car and approached the main entrance, her heart pounding with each step. The heavy wooden doors stood slightly ajar, as if someone had been expecting her arrival. Inside, the smell of decay and something else, something clinical and wrong, filled her nostrils. This was where her dark secrets were hidden, waiting to be unearthed. The asylum's interior was a maze of corridors lined with patient rooms, each door bearing the scars of decades of neglect. Sarah moved through the building with unsettling certainty, her feet finding the safe paths through rubble and broken glass. Old medical equipment lay scattered throughout, restraint beds, electroshock devices, and filing cabinets filled with patient records that should have been destroyed. In the administrative wing, she discovered a room that made her blood run cold. The walls were covered with photographs, not just of her, but of dozens of other people, all with the same vacant expression she'd seen in her own images. Each photo was labeled with dates, locations, and cryptic notes written in familiar handwriting. A patient file lay open on the desk, bearing her name and a photograph from her childhood. The treatment notes described experimental procedures, memory suppression techniques, and something called Project Mirror. Her hands shook as she read the final entry. Subject exhibits successful integration of multiple identities. Recommend continuation of field testing. The truth crashed over Sarah like a tidal wave of horror. She hadn't been a patient here. She had been a test subject. The experimental treatments described in the file matched her fragmented memories of childhood therapy sessions she'd always assumed were normal psychological treatment. Dr. Webb's name appeared throughout the documentation as the project's lead researcher. Her phone buzzed with a text from Webb, "You're not ready for the truth yet. Come back." But Sarah was already descending into the asylum's basement, drawn by a compulsion she couldn't explain. The lower levels contained laboratories and observation rooms with two-way mirrors, equipment that looked far too modern for an abandoned facility. In the deepest chamber, she found them. Dozens of people sitting in chairs connected to machines that hummed with electrical current. They all looked exactly like her, but their eyes held different personalities, different memories. Each was a fragment of who she used to be before the experiments began. The psychological thriller had become a nightmare of fractured identity and stolen souls. "Welcome home, Sarah," a voice said from behind her. She turned to find Dr. Webb standing in the doorway, no longer the kindly mentor she'd known, but something far more sinister. "You've been our most successful subject. 27 distinct personalities, each with their own memories, skills, and purposes." Webb explained how the abandoned asylum served as a front for ongoing psychological experiments. Patients weren't treated, they were harvested, their minds split and reformed into useful tools. Sarah's forensic psychology career had been engineered, her expertise in repressed memory cases making her the perfect unwitting agent. "You have been solving crimes, conducting investigations, gathering intelligence, all while believing you were helping people. Each personality serves a different function. The one you call Sarah is just the day shift supervisor, keeping the others in line." The revelation shattered her sense of reality. Every case she'd solved, every breakthrough she had made, had been orchestrated by other versions of herself. She was a prisoner in her own mind, and the darkest secrets belonged to her. As Webb moved closer, Sarah felt something shifting inside her mind. Other voices began to surface, confident, angry, desperate. She realized she could access the other personalities,
each one a specialist designed for specific tasks. The investigator who'd tracked down the asylum, the infiltrator who'd gained access to secure areas, the analyst who decoded the hidden messages. "You can't control all of us," Sarah heard herself say, but the voice wasn't entirely her own. "We remember what you did to the original Sarah. We remember what you did to the others." Webb's expression changed to one of concern. "The integration process isn't complete. You're experiencing cascade failure." He reached for a device on the wall, some kind of neural interface. "I need to reset your primary personality before the others take control permanently." But Sarah was already moving, her body acting on training she didn't remember receiving. The fight for control of her own mind had begun, and she wasn't sure which version of herself would emerge victorious. The confrontation with Webb became a battle fought on multiple levels of consciousness. As Sarah struggled physically to escape the asylum, her alternate personalities waged war in her mind. Some wanted to submit, to return to the comfortable lie of her constructed life. Others demanded justice, revenge against the man who'd stolen their original identity. Through fragmented memories, she began to piece together the truth. The real Sarah had been a brilliant but troubled teenager, admitted to Millbrook for treatment of trauma-induced dissociation. Instead of healing her, Webb had weaponized her condition, creating a stable of identities that could function independently in the outside world. The abandoned asylum wasn't abandoned at all. It was a research facility disguised as ruins, continuing its work in secret. The other subjects she'd found weren't failed experiments, but active agents, their minds so fractured they'd become willing participants in their own imprisonment. Sarah fought her way through the facility, but with each step she felt herself fragmenting further. The question wasn't whether she could escape, it was whether there would be anything left of her to save. In the asylum's main hall, Sarah faced her final choice. Webb had activated a facility-wide system designed to suppress her rebellious personalities and restore her to her programmed state. The machines hummed with deadly purpose, and she could feel her alternate selves beginning to fade. But as the process began, something unexpected happened. The other subjects, the ones she thought were catatonic, began to stir. Her presence had awakened something in them, a shared recognition of their stolen lives. Together, they represented dozens of fractured minds, all victims of the same psychological thriller that had consumed her existence. The facility systems overloaded as too many personalities fought for freedom simultaneously. Alarms blared, emergency lights flashed, and the building began to shake. Sarah ran toward the exit, not knowing which version of herself would emerge into the daylight. Behind her, Millbrook Asylum finally lived up to its abandoned reputation, collapsing under the weight of its own dark secrets. But the real question remained: in a world where identity could be manufactured and memories could be implanted, how could anyone be certain of who they really were? The truth about Sarah's fate remains as fractured as her identity. Did she escape as herself or as one of Webb's creations? The psychological thriller that began with mysterious photographs ended with the ultimate question about the nature of self and the reliability of memory. In a world where our minds can be our greatest enemies, the darkest secrets might be the ones we keep from ourselves. What do you think happened to Sarah? Was she ever real, or just another constructed identity in Webb's twisted experiment? Share your theories in the comments below. I read every single one, and your insights often reveal plot details I never considered. If this mind-bending story left you questioning the nature of identity and the reliability of memory, hit that like button to let me know. And if you're brave enough to dive deeper into the darkest corners of human psychology, subscribe and ring that notification bell. There are more twisted stories waiting to be uncovered, more abandoned places with secrets that refuse to stay buried. Until next time, stay kind, stay sharp, and stay curious.